Alright, I'm in the car. I've got my converter. We've got our harness with the added wire that we put on. We've got everything plugged in, the factory cluster connectors, the S2000 connectors, and we've made sure that we took readings off the factory cluster to make sure we get our fuel in the same spot. And then we also made sure that we have a dedicated coolant temp sensor going to the cluster and nothing else. And at this point we can now connect our converter into the 10-pin connector. And for now I'm just going to hide everything behind the cluster. I'm not going to permanently mount everything. We're just going to put our key in, and I'm going to go ahead and start the car. Alright, and at this point, I am going to start a screen record so I can put this on next to us here. And the first thing we're going to do is connect to the device to make changes. We're going to go to Settings, Wi-Fi, and you should see a network called S2000 Cluster. If you don't, just reset your Wi-Fi. We're going to connect to that. Mine connected very quickly. I'm going to go to my browser, and I'm going to go to 192.168.4.1, and if it says live in the top right, we're connected. And then the very first thing we're going to do is go to Settings and make sure we have the correct cluster that we are using selected. I'm using an AP1, so that's all set. And then the next thing we're going to do is configure the coolant, so I'll go back to that tab now. Okay, so for the coolant, once you start the car, you'll see the sensor readings start to count down from 4095. I found that mine usually settles out around 1900. You'll find that once you get to operating temperature, the value will settle out plus or minus 50 or so. This value is just a voltage reading. It's arbitrary, but it gives us a great deal of resolution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear all these. I know that I want my operating temperature, which I want to be 3 bars on mine. I know that that's going to be around 1900. So what I'm actually going to do is make it a little bit greater than 1900, just so we're not on the edge all the time going back and forth between segments. I'm going to make it 2000. I'm going to make segment 4 1800, so that way the 1900's right in between those, and it'll keep the third segment on all the time unless something's going wrong. And then segment 7 will make something like 800. I'm not exactly sure what temperature that represents, but as we gather more data, I'll be able to fill these in with a little bit more accuracy. And then I'm just going to hit extrapolate. And what that does is fill in the rest of the values for us with decent values. I'll probably increase segment 2 just a little bit. We'll make it 2600. So there we go. So maybe 2400 will do for now. And I'm just going to even these out. So we got 24, 2000, 1800, 1500, 12, and 8. And then I'll just hit save. So basically, once this number gets below 2400, segment 2 will light. Once it gets below 2000, segment 3 will light, which I want to be my operating temperature. If you want segment 4 to be your operating temperature, then you'd want to move the values up 1. And that's basically how the coolant temperature works. I just know that my operating temperature is around 1900 on the sensor, so I want to put it right in between the segment that I want lit and the next segment. So as you can see, 2000, 1800, 1900's right in between there, so we should be all set. Same thing for you guys if you have Hondata or some kind of engine management or a gauge. That's the best way to set this. You just compare this value, the sensor reading, to the actual temperature that the gauge or your software is reading in the other software. And that's the most accurate way to get this. And like I said, as we get more data, we're going to make these a lot more accurate from the factory. So anyway, I made sure that was saved, so we should be all set. And in a few minutes, when this gets to 2400, I'll confirm that the second segment lights up, and then we're going to move on to fuel. So for fuel, we've made it even easier. So all you have to do is drive the car until your tank is almost empty, and at that point is when I would do the cluster swap, just so you know your fuel tank is all the way down and on your factory gauge. And then all you do is go down to auto learn, you hit start, you set your empty point at the gas station, or before, you can set it whenever really, it'll just fill in the empty box essentially with that value. Same as the coolant temp, we have our sensor reading right here. And then what you're going to do at the gas station, hit set empty, fill the car all the way up until the pump shuts off, hit set full, and then commit, and it'll automatically fill in the values. Alternatively, you can do what I did. I actually removed the fuel sender, and on my fuel sender, since I have an EK, the empty, 1/4, half, 3/4, and full are all marked. So I moved it to those points, and I just saw what the sensor reading was, and I filled in those boxes, or close to it. So right now I know I have almost a full tank, so 19 segments makes sense. And we can also do the extrapolation on this as well, same as the coolant temp. So all you do, fill in your boxes. I have a pretty good setup here for the EK. So I have 2800, 1950, 1650, 1150, and 280. Seems to work pretty well. As you drive and put a few tanks of fuel through the car, you'll kind of get an idea for these values. Essentially empty, you want it to show low fuel when you have a couple gallons left, right? That's how modern vehicles work. And in the meantime, our second coolant segment lit up, so I'm just going to check and make sure that we're below 24. Yep. And we're above 2000. So there we go. And then finally, we'll get into the speed tab. So speed is pretty simple. We're just putting in a correction factor for the AP1 and my EK with factory size tires. 37 seems to work pretty well. It's almost dead on. It's within a mile per hour. If you have an AP2, 41 should be your starting value. The AP2 cluster is a little bit different, so 41 in this box, and then hit save. And then here at the bottom we have a sensitivity scale. So I have mine on 15%. My car is stock D15 non-VTEC, very, very slow. So I don't need the speed to update crazy fast. So I have mine set to 15%, which gives you a smoother speedometer. But if you have a faster accelerating car, you can turn this up all the way up to 60%. And basically what that does, the speed will update faster, but it'll be a little more twitchy. So as you're on and off the gas when you're driving, it will go up and down a little bit faster. One thing to take note of, at slow speeds, we're just not receiving a ton of data from the car, so the speed is a little bit slow to update at slow speeds, but unfortunately that's just the nature of having a low resolution speed sensor going into a high resolution cluster. So it seems to work pretty well, and we have software implemented so that it shouldn't be too bad for anybody, but of course I'm welcome to any feedback, and we're going to dial this in as we get more people using these and get more feedback. And finally, we'll go into the settings tab. So on settings, we have our cluster type, which we showed to begin with. You want to select that first before you do any of the other settings. VSS input, so you could feed this converter box directly from a high frequency transmission like the 0506 RSX. Odds are you'll have K-Pro or a VSS converter, so high frequency is used fairly rarely. And again, read the instruction manual. It'll kind of tell you the difference between those. It's very simple to figure out. And then we have advanced mode, where if you hit that, it lets you fill in every single fuel segment. Not really necessary, but that's for the people who want to really dial in their fuel gauge. And then we have a restore defaults. You get the numbers screwed up, you can't remember where you started, just hit restore defaults. It'll fill in all the numbers that it came with. And then we just have some info at the bottom, the network, the IP address, and then the firmware. And we will be releasing firmware updates from time to time that you can download from the website, and then you can update the firmware in the device without having to connect anything. And again, that's kind of the overview. Anybody has any questions, fastest way to reach out is S2000 Cluster on Instagram. You're also welcome to send an email, sales@s2000cluster.com. And we're hoping you guys like these, and we are committed to making a working, really well-working product. That's why I came out with these. I was dealing with other people's products and answering a ton of questions about them, and I just thought that if we have our own product, I'd be much happier with that. and I tried to address all the issues that other people have. And like I said, I'm committed to making this an excellent product. So if anybody has any feedback at all, please reach out. If you have any data you want to share, please reach out. And I really appreciate you guys and all the support we've received on this project. And I'm very excited to get these out in the world and see what people think. Thank you.